Well, as we say, the daycare report was prepared by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. David Macdonald is a senior economist with the organization. He joins me now. Mr. Macdonald, good to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in to talk about these numbers. Let me start first of all by getting a little bit of background here. How did you obtain this information? What did you survey?
We made 10,000 phone calls over the course of the summer. We called most of the childcare centres or home daycare providers in the country. All licensed and regulated providers would be included here in some of the bigger cities we sampled, but it was a very long 4-month phone survey.
Is there an easy answer to this question? Why are the childcare fees so uneven across the country?
Well, it really depends on provincial policy. This is everything to do with provincial policy and very little to do with market pressures and that sort of thing. So Quebec's got the cheapest fees because the Quebec government has decided that they're going to cap fees at $8 a day for most parents. And places like Toronto have the highest fees because there's no caps on fees, and therefore it's what the market will bear, and so you end up with very high prices.
All right, so is this really a story about government intervention in the childcare system? Where that happens, the fees tend to be moderated somewhat.
Absolutely, and so if you rank, in each one of the age categories, you rank the cities by lowest to highest fees. The lowest fees are always found in the Quebec cities, second lowest are in Winnipeg, third lowest are in Charlottetown, because Manitoba and Prince Edward Island also have set fees, although at a higher level. And then the rest of them are market system, and so they're always higher.
And so in that context then, when the survey shows that in 61% of Canadian cities, the childcare costs are rising higher than the rate of inflation, is that the same connection as well? That in a free market setting, they'll go higher than they will, obviously, in a government regulated.
Yeah, they are increasing in Quebec. So Quebec has an inflationary increase, which this year was actually a little bit higher than inflation. And in other provinces, like in Charlottetown and Prince Edward Island or Winnipeg and Manitoba, those fees have actually been fairly constant over the last couple of years because the government has decided not to change them, and so they just stay the same year after year.
Okay. The report also points out some provinces have taken steps to lower childcare costs. What are they doing?
Yeah, so this is all very new. So we've got these 3 provinces, Quebec, PEI, Manitoba. These have traditionally been the set fee provinces, and the rest were market rate. Well, this year, in a real big change, we see Newfoundland, Labrador, St. John's in particular, has almost half of its spaces now at their set fee of $30 a day. And as a result, the fees fell 13% in that city as a direct result of this move to set fees. And we're also seeing Alberta and British Columbia embarking on a portion of their systems being either set fee or a fee reduction. So $25 a day, we're finding in 10% of the centres in Alberta, in Calgary and Edmonton. And in British Columbia, they have a small section at $10 a day, but most of the providers are actually signing up for $100 or more reduction in their fees for preschoolers. And so it's another way by which the provinces are trying to reduce fees. So we have a lot of experimentation in this year in particular at the provincial level.
Okay, and it sounds like perhaps more to come. What role is the federal government and federal funding playing in the cost of childcare in this country?
So the federal government has become involved for the first time in a decade and a half in childcare, starting with bilateral agreements that it was signing last summer. And that's the first time they've been involved since the Martin years in 2005. And so for the efforts in those 3 provinces, those new provinces, Newfoundland, Alberta, and BC, the efforts pre-existed the federal money, but I think it's safe to say that the federal money encouraged them to roll out more quickly or to more places. And so the federal government is involved through these bilateral agreements, and the provinces are using that money in different ways, 3 of which towards reducing fees.
And as I understand it, the federal government is it's planning to spend $7.5 billion on childcare spaces across the country in the next decade. So what effect will some of that money is rolling out, and what effect do you think we'll see on costs and fees as more of that money rolls out? And I guess more of these provinces take a closer look at their childcare systems and how to moderate the costs.
Yeah, so I certainly think that by the survey we're going to do this summer, that'll start in a couple months, we'll see fees drop again in St. John's. We missed a lot of the fee decreases in British Columbia due to the timing of the survey and when it was being rolled out. So we expect fairly big decreases in fees in British Columbia as a result of this $100 a month reduction in fees. And we may see some additional reduction, particularly in Calgary, as more $25 a day centres are constructed there. And so I think that we will continue to see fee decreases in those 3 provinces. And what will be interesting, what the wild cards are, is what happens in the federal election. Will there be more money towards childcare? And also what happens in Ontario with their provincial budget upcoming.
Okay, let's finish on this. The provinces receiving federal childcare money, they're not compelled to lower fees, although in some cases that's happening. But Is that something that should be looked at? Should they be compelled to lower fees in relation to the money they're getting from the federal government?
Yes, they can do a variety of things. They could expand the number of subsidized spaces, for instance. They could expand the subsidies themselves for low-income households. And so that's what some of the other provinces are doing instead of targeting fees per se. Those things are important, certainly, for low-income households, but the targeting of fees are what most people experience when they try to put their kids in childcare. It's also where you get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of encouraging more people to work and driving GDP growth as a result of more, particularly female labor force participation.
Right.
And so, I think as we continue to move forward, I think that if the federal government wants to put more money in, I think that there's a case to be made that there should be more strings attached and should be devoted more specifically to reducing fees.
All right, David Macdonald, Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. Always good to talk to you. Thanks for coming by.
Thanks for having me.